Ignoring. People ignore boundaries as a passive-aggressive way of pretending they didn't hear them, but boundaries should be respected. When people ignore our requests, resentment builds. Over time, this erodes respect in the relationship. Kim says, "I won't be able to help you move." 2 days later, Kim's friend says, "When can you come to help me move this weekend?" Kim has a few options here. Restate her boundary, go with the flow by helping her friend, or not show up to assist with moving. Assertively, Kim could state, "I mentioned 2 days ago that I wouldn't be able to help you move." If she's too scared to restate her boundary, she'll likely end up helping her friend move, and her friend will likely ignore the next one Kim tries to set. Ignoring boundaries looks like doing what they want despite your boundary, acting as if your boundary was misunderstood. How to handle ignoring. Restate your boundary. Request that the other person repeat back what you stated. Stress the importance of the change moving forward. I need this in future situations as well. React to ignoring immediately after you notice the issue. If not, the boundary will disappear. Rationalizing and questioning. Since you accepted behaviors in the past that you now deem inappropriate, people will react by asking questions as a way to rationalize their behavior as unproblematic. In this scenario, Kim's friend responds with probing questions. "Why can't you help me move? I would help you move." Questions like these are hard to answer. It's tempting to start offering excuses or apologies, but it isn't helpful to say you're sorry about setting a boundary. Remember that people benefit from you not having limits. You have to look out for yourself. No excuses required. People may question your shift when you've done things that you are no longer willing to do. It's okay to let them know that you changed your mind or that the arrangement no longer works for you. Rationalizing or questioning sounds like, "Why are you asking me to change? What's the point of doing things differently now?" How to handle rationalizing or questioning. Be careful not to explain yourself. Keep your response short by saying something like, "This is what's healthy for me." Saying too much will put you in a back and forth negotiation. Defensiveness. This happens when people feel attacked. Being clear in our wording helps minimize defensiveness. However, some people will respond defensively, no matter how you state your expectations and desires. Defensively, people will turn the issue on you because they don't want to be at fault. In this situation, Kim's friend answers, "It's not like I move all the time, but fine if you don't want to help me." Defensive people aren't listening while you're talking. They're personalizing what you say and crafting a response. Their response has much more to do with them than it does with you. They are focused only on getting their needs met and resisting any change in your dynamic. But healthy relationships are not one-sided. The needs of both individuals are equally important. Defensiveness looks like turning your request around by making a request of you, explaining why they did something, accusing you of attacking them, bringing up what you've done in the past as a point of reference for your request. How to talk to people when they're being defensive. Make it about yourself, not them. Use I statements. Talk about one issue at a time. Don't talk about old issues with this person while stating your boundary. Use feeling words, such as, "When you," "I feel." Say something in the moment or soon after. Don't let issues fester for days, weeks, or months. Know your audience. If you can't talk in person, text or email your thoughts. Truly, some conversations are best had in person, but when you feel you won't be able to set the boundary face-to-face, set it by any means necessary. Ghosting. Ending things without explanation or disappearing is often called ghosting and is an unhealthy response to boundaries. People who are passive-aggressive use this response. Rather than stating their objection, they try to show you how they feel through their actions. Ghosting happens right away or a few days after you have made your wishes known. It's generally a form of punishment. For example, Kim says, "I won't be able to help you this weekend." Later that week, Kim texts her friend several times to check in or say hello, as she usually does, and her friend doesn't respond. Kim is sure that her friend is receiving the messages because she sees the red receipt marking them as read. Ghosting looks like not answering calls or texts, canceling plans, keeping in touch with mutual friends or contacts but leaving you out. How to handle ghosting. Send a precise text message or email mentioning the behavior you're noticing. People are likely to respond because they don't want to seem upset when they are. Express how the ghosting is making you feel and the concerns you have about the relationship. If receiving a response takes a few days, be clear to restate how the ghosting makes you feel. If you don't receive a response, remind yourself that their reaction was not about you. It was about their interpretation of the situation. Silent treatment. This response is less extreme than ghosting, but still painful. It's also passive-aggressive and a form of punishing you for trying to set the boundary. This person will be noticeably distant after you assert your need. If you try to talk to them, they will offer short responses like yes or no. It's lonely and confusing to be the receiver of the silent treatment. The other person is present, but not really. If Kim's friend used the silent treatment, it would go like this. Kim sees her friend the following week for a previously scheduled lunch date, and her friend isn't acting like her usual self. She's quiet and seems preoccupied. Kim tries engaging her friend in conversation, but her friend answers with one-word responses. Silent treatment looks like going hours, days without talking, providing short responses to questions to passive-aggressively express upset. How to handle the silent treatment. Verbalize what you notice. You seem upset. Can we talk about what I said to you? Be clear about what you perceive to be the issue. Challenge the behavior of the other person. Perhaps offer feedback about why you set the boundary. I was overwhelmed and unable to add another thing to an already full plate. Acceptance. Acceptance is the healthy way to respond to boundaries and is a sign of a functional, mutual relationship. In this case, Kim's friend says, "Thank you for letting me know." And just like that, Kim is off the hook for helping her friend move. No harm, no foul. Despite all the fear around boundary setting, in my experience, most people will graciously accept your requests. When people respond in an unhealthy way, it's typically a sign that you needed limits a long time ago and that you need to reevaluate the relationship to assess whether your needs are being met satisfactorily. Most likely, you've been denying the issues for far too long. Perhaps your issue is being asked to do things, saying yes, and resenting the other person for asking. Or your issue might be allowing someone to say things to you that make you uncomfortable. Boundaries are the cure to most relationship problems, but both parties have to participate and respect the boundaries on either side. Boundaries are the cure. Signs of an unhealthy relationship. You are unable to express your needs because the other person refuses to listen. The other person refuses to meet reasonable requests. There's emotional, physical, or sexual abuse. You feel sad, angry, drained, or disappointed after most interactions. The relationship is one-sided. You give and they take. There's a lack of trust in the relationship. The other person refuses to change some unhealthy behaviors. The other person has an addiction that is harmful to you. Boundaries grow and expand over time as our needs change. Areas where we commonly need boundaries. Once you learn to identify boundary issues, communicate your needs, and follow up with action, you can start implementing boundaries in various aspects of your life. They are valuable in so many different scenarios. Here are the top areas where people struggle. We'll explore each of these in detail in the second half of the book. Family. This will not come as a surprise to you. Family is where people experience the biggest challenges around boundaries, especially within parent-child relationships. Adults are confused about how to navigate interactions with their aging parents, but parents should respect the limits and needs of their children, even when they are young. It's okay for a small child to set limits like not eating meat or feeling uncomfortable around certain people. Parents who respect those boundaries make space for their children to feel safe and loved, and they reinforce the positive habit of articulating needs. When parents ignore these preferences, children feel lonely, neglected, and like their needs don't matter, and they will likely struggle with boundaries as adults. Siblings can also struggle with boundaries as they grow up. The older sibling may be used to operating in a particular manner, such as looking after younger siblings, but this role may not be needed after the younger sibling reaches a certain age. Dynamics in parent-child and sibling relationships get further complicated when spouses, grandchildren, and in-laws come into the mix. We will take a deep dive into the family system in Chapter 10. Work. I see far too many people in my practice who are working way beyond the 40-hour work week. They come in exhausted and frustrated, feeling powerless, but overwork is often more within your control than you think. It comes from having porous boundaries with your boss, your team, and your time. Limits can help you maintain a healthy work-life harmony. When you're unable to leave work at the office, disconnect on vacation, or shut off from work at a certain hour, you ignore your own boundaries at the expense of your well-being and often the well-being of your family. In Chapter 13, we'll take a closer look at identifying and resolving these issues in the workplace. Romance. Boundary issues in dating relationships often arise when you oversell and underdeliver. This usually looks like agreeing to things in the beginning and not being able to keep up the pace as time goes on. Then, ultimately, you underdeliver on your promises. If you're shifting the way you're able to show up, verbalize what's causing the change. Be clear, such as saying something like, I won't be able to text frequently during the workday anymore because I have a new boss and I want to make a good impression. Boundary issues also come from putting way too many unspoken expectations on the other person. When it comes to love, for some reason we all want our partner to read our minds and know everything we want without having to ask, but this is an impossible expectation. Being honest and upfront, from the beginning if possible, about what you expect and what you can offer will save you and your partner lots of heartache and arguments. In a long-term relationship, you'll have to set boundaries as each of you grows and the relationship evolves. This is especially true during transitions like moving in together, getting married, and having children. The good news is that whether expressed in the beginning or after years of being together, boundaries can connect the two of you in a new way and create space for open and assertive communication. We'll get to romance in Chapter 11. Friendships. Toxic friendships, we've all had them. One day you look around and think, why am I even friends with this person? They consistently fill in the blank. Let me down, demand too much from me, make me feel guilty, flake on plans, and on and on. Unhealthy friendships happen as a result of unhealthy boundaries. Friendships where you feel like you're giving more than you're receiving are harmful. Interactions with friends that often end in arguments are harmful. Friends are your chosen family, and these relationships should bring ease, comfort, support, and fun to your life, not excess drama. In Chapter 12, I'll define a healthy versus an unhealthy friendship, and take a look at what's holding you back from having healthy friendships. We'll also explore how to change or navigate out of a toxic friendship. Technology. Adults and teenagers are reporting higher levels of anxiety and depression due to a fear of missing out, FOMO, and comparison games that arise from social media consumption. Infidelity is on the rise due to inappropriate usage of apps and social media. Technology brings new interpersonal challenges to the human experience, and it isn't going anywhere. Technology will continue to advance at a rapid rate, so it's necessary to have limits in place to help you protect your happiness and relationships in the face of this pace. You need to determine how you will expand your boundaries to include technology in your life. Setting limits with devices is crucial within relationships and the family system, especially when it comes to children. In Chapter 14, we'll look further into technology boundaries. Kim's issues were with saying no, but there are so many other ways that boundaries can help us. Exercise. Grab your journal or a separate sheet of paper to complete the following exercise. Think of a time when someone said no to you. How did you react? Could you have reacted in a healthier way? Think of a time when you wanted to say no but didn't. How could you have expressed the boundary? How do you think people in your life will respond to your boundaries? Is this based on fact or your own assumptions? What about your past makes you think this? Where are you in need of boundaries right now? List 3 places or relationships where you would like to set a new one. For more insight, take the self-assessment quiz on this page to determine whether your boundaries are porous, rigid, or healthy. 2. The cost of not having healthy boundaries. Choosing discomfort over resentment. Brené Brown. Erica thought she had to be a hard worker, a great friend, and an all-around rock star mom, all while looking like she slept 8 hours a night. She worked 40 hours a week as an accountant and was the single mother of 2 girls, ages 7 and 9. When she wasn't at work, Erica was driving the girls around to activities. Her oldest played soccer, the youngest took dance classes, and both were active in the Girl Scouts while also seeing tutors. Her daughter's father provided only financial support and didn't help much with the kids, but Erica was still determined to give her girls the best life possible. She based her perspective about motherhood on the fact that the other mothers around her seemed to be doing it all without any help, so after college, she didn't think anything of moving 800 miles away from her family. This year, though, during her busy tax season, she started to unravel. The long days, nights, and expectations were becoming too much. Washing and putting the dishes away every night turned into dishes piled up in the sink. Her regular routine of washing a load of laundry per day turned into 2 weeks' worth of dirty laundry. She started zoning out while scrolling through social media on her phone, which made her late everywhere. The kids ate quick meals or frozen foods, as Erica paid no attention anymore to providing a balanced diet. Erica was unintentionally on strike. At some point, she mentally said, "Screw it, how am I supposed to be a fantastic employee and mom at the same time?" She couldn't do it all. So she did as little as possible at home and spent almost no time with friends. When the girls tried to talk to her about the changes at home, she'd deny there was a problem. Then, for a few days, she'd get back into her old high-functioning rhythm of cleaning, cooking, and taking the kids to activities, but she couldn't stick with it and would inevitably fall back into letting things go. Erica started therapy at the urging of her friends, who saw her becoming burned out. While she was aware that she spent hours on social media and had become more withdrawn, she questioned whether she was actually experiencing burnout. After all, everything was fine at work, but she noted that work offered her support and praise, while the expectations were reasonable. At home, she said her job was thankless, never-ending, and mundane. She had no tools to advocate for herself at home like she did at work. There was no support system where she could vent her frustrations. She felt like she could never meet the expectations of being a good mother that she'd previously tried to achieve. Erica had to create realistic expectations for her role as a mother, which meant setting healthy boundaries. When I began seeing Erica, she spoke about her fantasies of running away and leaving everything. It wasn't that she didn't love her kids. Obviously she did. It was just also exhausting. She was frustrated with not being able to depend on their father. She resented having to ask him to pick up the girls from school or practices. Erica craved a well-balanced life for her daughters, but she was frustrated to be the only person responsible for making it work. In my office, Erica told me she'd never heard her friends talk about motherhood in such a negative way. It made her feel ungrateful. And she'd always wanted to be a mom, so why wasn't she enjoying it? The older the girls get, the more I pull away, she said. At some point, I realized that motherhood would be endless. Giving Erica the space to talk openly allowed her to be honest about her feelings she'd been avoiding. During one session, she had an aha moment when she realized her anger toward her ex-husband was being redirected toward her children. That emotional breakthrough led her to take small steps to be more focused at home. Instead of complaining about not having help, she hired a housekeeper to come in a few times a month. She asked her friends if they would be willing to watch the girls for a few hours while she spent some time alone. She started giving the girls chores so that everything wouldn't be on her. Erica started managing burnout by letting go of the need to be a rock star and instead asking for help when she needed it. What can happen when we avoid setting boundaries? Burnout. Burnout is overwhelming and boundaries are the cure. Burnout happens when people become emotionally, mentally, or physically exhausted. In many cases, like Erica's, it leads to chronic frustration, neglect in duties, moodiness, and avoidance. An article published by the Harvard Gazette found that doctor burnout costs the healthcare system $4.6 billion a year. As a result, doctors make critical medical mistakes, misdiagnosing illnesses, prescribing the wrong medications, and not paying attention to essential details. According to Emily Nagoski and Amelia Nagoski, the authors of Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle, burnout is caused by stress, which they describe as the neurological and physiological shift that happens in your body when you encounter triggers. Burnout is caused by not knowing when to say no, not knowing how to say no, prioritizing others over yourself, people-pleasing, superhero syndrome, I can do it all, unrealistic expectations, and not being appreciated for what you do. Let's go through each of these for Erica. Not knowing when to say no. Despite knowing that her busy season at work was coming up, Erica made no preparations to do less. Instead, she wanted to continue to operate at the same pace as she had during her typical work season. She even added another activity to her kids' schedule at her busiest time of year. Without additional support, Erica would have to get the kids and herself ready, take them to school, work 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., pick up the girls from school, take them to activities, prepare dinner, clean the house, help with homework, get the girls ready for bed, plug back in for work, prepare for the next day, and sleep 5 to 6 hours. Then she had to start it all over the next day. Suggested boundaries. Most parents want their children to be well-rounded, but that doesn't have to come at the expense of the parent's sanity. Erica could check with other parents in her neighborhood to see if carpooling is an option. She could also lighten her load by saying no to anything beyond one activity per semester for her girls. Not knowing how to say no. No is extremely difficult to say, especially when you want to do it all. Erica had to learn to be okay with not doing it all, and also not allowing her daughters to get fixated on doing it all. Suggested boundary. Instead of saying yes to all extracurricular activities, Erica could wait a semester to see if the girls are still interested. Giving kids time helps them think through their options. The ability to try everything doesn't allow children to become good at any one activity. Prioritizing others over yourself. Erica's daily to-do list didn't include anything for relaxing or reconnecting to herself. Work, home, and kids were the focus of her days. She was completely missing from her list. Suggested boundary. Erica could schedule time for herself every day, engaging in a quick morning routine. For example, do a wake-up stretch, 2 minutes, meditate or sit quietly, 2 minutes, read something inspirational, 2 minutes, write down thoughts and one thing you're grateful for, 2 or 3 minutes, recite a positive affirmation or intention for the day, 1 minute. Repeating this plan before bed would also be helpful. Sticking to a morning and evening routine would ensure that Erica had time to connect with herself daily. People-pleasing. Erica had a lot of people she wanted to please, her children, boss, her friends. She wanted to be a better mother than her mother had been to her. In trying to please everyone, however, she was left with little energy to care for herself. Suggested boundary. I suggested that Erica start asking herself, why is this important to me? And do only what is most important. Sometimes we do things that aren't important to us, but that we believe maintain a particular image of good parent or person who has it all together. Superhero syndrome. I can do it all. No one can do it all. Believing we can leads to burnout. In Erica's case, she saw the mom bloggers who posted gorgeous pictures of themselves holding their well-dressed babies. For a long time, she believed it was possible to do everything and still cook carefully plated meals every day. She had no perspective on the average woman's struggle to manage work, life, and relationships, even though she was living it herself. Suggested boundary. Stop following people on social media who make it appear they have it all together all the time. Connect more with mothers who are honest about the struggles of their everyday lives and share ways to manage stress. Unrealistic expectations. Erica had been washing a load of laundry daily, cooking dinner, working, driving her kids around, and working some more. Her expectations weren't reasonable, realistic, or sustainable. I suggested she ask herself some questions. Whose expectations am I fulfilling? Do my kids believe I'll say yes to every request? Does my family require 1-hour recipes every night? Then she considered that perhaps her expectations were unreasonable. Realistic expectations don't lead to stress. Suggested boundary. Erica had tasks on her plate that she didn't have to do herself. She became willing to ask for help or hire help so that she could do less and delegate more. We can't create more time, but we can do less, delegate, or ask for help. Not being appreciated for what you do. Erica's burnout didn't extend to work because she received recognition for her efforts and felt valued there. This gave her the incentive to be great at her job. At home, however, Erica didn't receive any praise for her efforts. Suggested boundary: tell people what you need. Erica has become aware that she needs positive feedback and affirmation. Communicating this need to her family could give her the push she needs. Here are a few additional issues that commonly lead to burnout. Things that lead to burnout: listening to people complain about the same things over and over, doing your best with little appreciation for your work, dispensing your advice to people who don't value your feedback, engaging in dialogue with people who take an emotional toll on you, doing things that don't make you happy, lacking balance, harmony in your roles and duties, setting high expectations at work, at home, or in relationships, having a continual urge to control situations outside of your control. Mental health and boundaries. Mental health issues are not the cause of an inability to say no, be assertive, and advocate for ourselves, but this inability can certainly be exacerbated by mental health problems. For example, ruminating, which is replaying thoughts over and over in our heads, is a behavior that comes with some diagnoses. Focusing on how others might respond is one way we ruminate, which impacts our ability to act. Boundary issues are more pronounced with the following mental health problems. Anxiety. When people seek therapy, it's usually for anxiety and/or depression. According to the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, 40 million adult Americans have been diagnosed with anxiety and approximately 20 million with depression. Many people are diagnosed with both. First, let's take a closer look at anxiety. It's often triggered by setting unrealistic expectations, the inability to say no, people-pleasing, and the inability to be assertive. When people come to me with anxiety, we begin to dissect the different aspects of their lives and to work on ways to minimize the triggers that cause them to become anxious. Based on my experience with clients, the biggest trigger for anxiety is the inability to say no. So helping people with anxiety means assisting them in setting boundaries. Saying no is the most obvious way to set one, but rather than appear mean or displease someone, we often agree to things we don't want. We may agree to do something that we don't have time to do or that we don't really know how to do. Then we become anxious about all the things we've said yes to doing with and for others. We worry about getting it all done and doing it correctly. As these worries flood our brain, we experience anxiety, so setting a limit about what we're reasonably able and willing to do is one way to manage anxiety triggers. Unrealistic expectations of yourself and others can also trigger anxiety. Sometimes, expectations arise as a result of comparing yourself with others, or your expectations may come from family or cultural norms or your friends. If you deal with frequent anxiety, it's important to become aware of what is a reasonable expectation and what isn't. To determine if your expectations are reasonable, consider this. Whose standard am I trying to meet? Do I have the time to commit to this? What's the worst thing that could happen if I don't do this? How can I honor my boundaries in this situation? For people with chronic anxiety, the most challenging part of this process is the fear of what others might think. In an anxious state, people create scenarios that lead to adverse outcomes if they try to set a boundary. If I say no, then they'll say I'm being selfish and abandon me, for example. Even though the worst case is the least likely outcome, when you're anxious, it's exactly what you work hard to avoid. But the true worst case scenario is avoiding boundaries. Saying no to others allows you to say yes to yourself or to things you truly want. Affirmations for people who struggle with anxiety. I'm entitled to have expectations. In healthy relationships, my desires will be acknowledged and accepted. After I set limits, people will remain in a relationship with me. I can set standards even through my discomfort. Now let's take a look at how boundaries impact depression.